Welcome everybody to the Poster Podcast. My name is Taylor Ruddle and I like posters. That's about as much as an intro as I do for these things. I've got my first guest on this episode, Steven Lyons from up in Auckland. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh my God, I'm the first guest.
You are indeed the first guest.
This is it.
Yeah,
this is it. How exciting. No pressure.
Yeah. My loyal 15 or so listeners will remember I gave you a bit of a shout out in one of the earlier episodes, and then sort of coincidentally we met like a week after that, and we've kind of been talking shop and stuff since, and we figured we'd get on here and have a bit of a yarn about some posters, and I figured given that we've got a new Fast and Furious movie coming up, why not talk about those?
You thought you'd go with someone who didn't drive a car for 7 years.
Well, I mean, if you think that everyone who watches Fast and Furious drives cars, that might be cutting out a lot of the market there. I think I don't think I could drive when I saw them for the first time.
I was about to say, I think a lot of their audience probably legally can't drive a car.
We used to just recreate it in Need for Speed Underground 2. That was usually the vehicle. Great fun there.
Yeah. Man, Need for Speed must have done so well out of this franchise.
Absolutely, yeah. I think they kicked off around the same time. I know they used to always just see skylines, even like in person because of the second movie. I used to work at a pizza shop that was right next to a bottle store. And on Fridays, it would just be skyline, skyline, skyline. Because
of the sunset's so beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. No, we're up to 2 puns now. It's a good... are you quite a punny comic as well?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about cars, then yes, my puns could get exhausting.
That's brilliant. So
I'll really try my hardest. Yeah.
Jeez, I can't.
If I go too much, then I might need a hand braking pattern.
Nice. Okay, so in case you haven't guessed or seen from me telling it in the last episode, Steven is also a stand-up comedian. He is much more seasoned than I. Very, very funny.
I don't think the puns would help with that introduction. He's a very good comedian, but he also does puns.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. So I think we'll just crack into talking about the posters. We'll begin with the first one, which was The Fast and the Furious. I should have checked when these all came out, but I think it was around 2001, I think the first one came out. Does that sound about right?
I mean, yeah. I've got ADHD, so I have no concept of time. But I remember when the first one came out because, it would have been around when I was actually at university studying design. And the posters were, I'm not a car guy, but the posters were like, maybe I could get into cars because the marketing on this has been incredible. And I mean, 100%. It is, what are they at, like 20 years of doing Fast and the Furious? So
21 I think it was. I checked very briefly the other day, and I think you're right, they in the films as well, they really captured that speed of light, like the speed of light travel when they would push the nitrous, and all the colors would blur and they would kind of rock back into the seats. And yeah, you're right there. So do you remember any first impressions of seeing this poster when the movie came out?
Oh man, it's also, they did a bunch of different posters for every movie. Like that was the tricky thing. Definitely one of those movies where it was right at the start of people just being like, I don't know, make a bunch of movies. It'll be fine. It'll be a bunch of posters. Make all the posters. We'll work it out.
Yeah. The first one, for anybody that's just listening, is it's quite difficult to describe, actually. There is the faces of 4 people around the edges, which are the 4 characters. Paul. Oh, geez, I'm going to use their real names. He's called Dominic in the movies, isn't he?
Oh, wow. Has it been that long? Dom is Vin Diesel, right?
Yes, Vin Diesel.
Then there's Letty. Family.
And I can't remember what Dom's sister was called. I really should have researched this before we started, but I thought it would just be nice to kind of make a nostalgia chat.
I like it. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's I hope what's going to be some of the charm of this. And it's funny when you look at the scale of the crimes they were doing in the first movie. They were just stealing VCRs and televisions out of the back of a truck, and then you see where the franchise has gone, and they're launching into space.
Because the first movie is like the most all about family movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like no one's suspending a pickup truck from a helicopter in the first movie. They're actually going like, hey, maybe it is about family.
They're quite grounded in the beginning, aren't they? Although even as far back as the second one, they were doing that ridiculous bridge jump and stuff like that. So I suppose they had their sights set high. Did you actually enjoy the first movie?
Oh, I love I'm an action movie dude. So like for
Yeah.
me, I love all of them. I like if you ask me to explain the plot of any of them, I have no idea.
It's,
All right. Yeah, like you could put on like random scenes and I would be like, this still works. You
yeah.
know, is it's because they know what they're doing. They're like, did
Hmm.
we get a car? Yes.
Yeah.
Are this did we get away? Not yet. Oh, all
Yeah.
right. Antics.
It's like around movie four is when they all become kind of the same movie to me. Like I can remember the kind of the plot of the first three, and then when they came back, because something that I found kind of interesting is the second movie, Vin Diesel didn't come back for it, and then they had this deal where he did a cameo at the end of number three.
Yeah.
And do you remember? Have you read about this? They did some kind of deal where his agent or his studio got the rights to Riddick, and that was his like end of the bargain for doing a cameo in three. And then I guess he came back on as a producer for four, and that's when the movies
I give him full
continued.
credit for being like, no, this isn't the franchise. Riddick is the franchise.
Yeah,
He's like, we gotta forget about these silly little cars. People want to see me in space
with he can only see in the dark. That was his
with
gimmick, wasn't it?
sonar. Yeah.
I never saw that. It always kind of creeped me out as a little kid.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good sci-fi. It's a fun. I think
Yeah.
they're making another one of those too.
So
Why would
it
they
might pay
not?
off from 20 years down the line. That might be his next thing is to go on to Riddick.
Well, I think as long as it's insane,
Yeah.
like we will do, we people will go and people will pay to see it. We'll do, like
Yeah.
you're gonna go and see, if you like Fast and Furious movies, then and it's one of those great franchises where like action movies can still make it at the box office
Yeah.
because if you're into Fast and Furious, you don't want to watch that on your laptop. You want
That's
that to
true.
explode at you, and you want to be like, ah.
Yes, you're right. I actually went and saw one of the later ones for the first time in the theater, and it is a unique. You just can't get that experience at home in front of your computer. You're right there. They are sort of. It's like an event. You go out to see a Fast and the Furious movie. You get a group of people together, and yeah,
It's good dumb fun, like no one's turning up to see a Grammy, Grammy, to
yeah,
see it. Maybe there's probably actually Grammy with Fast and the Furious. You're more likely to see a Grammy award winning
yeah.
performance than an Oscar nominated performance.
They had very good soundtracks, to be honest.
Hell yeah.
I have a memory for this song. It's called Danza Kuduro. It was from the first one. It was a Spanish song, and my oldest comedy mentor, Ollie Horn, who I don't think he's listening right now, but if you are, hi, Ollie. He always used to enter to that song, and it was in the first movie, along with Corona beer. I knew so many people that drank that beer just because it was Dom's beer in in the Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, man. If I'd had more notice, I would have I would have gone and tracked down some Coronas. So
You
that, yeah,
would have got yourself a rosary, shaved your
yeah,
head,
it would have
maybe.
been perfect.
Yeah,
Oh, don't worry. Nature's doing that in its own time.
yeah. I feel like we're all on ticking clock there, aren't we?
Oh, the poster for the first one is like, I think it's gorgeous because it really is like it really one of the cool things that they always do for Fast and Furious is it's all just people. It's like
Yeah,
they have two jobs. It's like show the people, show the car.
yeah.
And the energy is like all of their posters have an energy to them. Like
Yeah,
it's not a franchise that like Transformers movie posters, there's got to be at least like 8 to
yeah.
20 of those by now, but
Uh-huh.
they all just look like robots.
Yeah, they lose a
Where-
lot of their silhouette, don't they? They're all kind of too.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Whereas
Something
Fast and
else,
Furious kept like taking chances and doing
they
weird stuff.
they really did. Some of the later movie posters like are just weird, and I really respect that they went, yeah, why not? Let's see. You are right though. There was a lot of variance for each movie had like 3 or 4 very different posters for it, which was cool though. One thing I
I
hadn't
think
realized, but just looking back on them now, is they had actually that Fast and the Furious logo that I don't know what the font is, but they already had that in the first one, which then they've continued on with the title of each of the follow-up movies. I didn't realize they had that like more or less nailed down so early.
yeah, and I've used that font and you shouldn't.
What did you
You
was it
shouldn't.
a
It's not. It's
parody?
antique olive Nord D italic, and it's a fat font that the more you look at it, the worse it gets.
Little
And
bits
so
are lumpy and stuff, aren't they?
chonky, the
Yeah.
S's will give you like
They're very top
nausea.
heavy. Yeah.
It is, yeah. The S's really have that vibe of this was a beautiful font at some different time.
Yeah.
And
That's one thing I'm glad to have you on the podcast is you actually know the names of fonts. If you've listened to any of my first 3 episodes, I used no names. So that you'll have a very good. There's a lot of holes in my knowledge, and it'll be good to have you around
well, I don't want
to.
to empower anyone to go out and start using antique olive because
Yeah, we'll bleep that out. We'll get that in the post.
yeah, just every time I say the name of antique olive,
Just bleep it
I
out.
expect it to be beeped out.
We'll replace it with Dom saying family, and then it'll be yeah. That was the thing about the first one as well. He actually spoke like a normal human in the first one, and then I don't know what point it changed, but you hear the trailer for the latest one, and he sounds like you're rubbing two handfuls of gravel together.
Yeah, he really fell into the Christopher Nolan Batman trap.
Yeah, that's
where
right.
it's just like, oh, can I do this more? And they're like, I don't know, I guess it's working. And then it's a couple of movies later, he's like, bit more, and they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
why not?
but then by the time
and then you end up with
it's coming out,
family.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I think you left your car running. No, that's Dom talking.
And then them just going, yeah, of course. You said it, pal. So I think if you haven't got anything else to say about the first one, we can move on to the second poster. I just think it's very stylish. I thought it was really bold how the type goes like, normal posters left to right, up to down. Maybe this one is like top left to bottom right. It's a very steep angle on it, but I think it looks cool.
It's deliciously uncomfortable because it's not even a set, like it's not a 45-degree angle.
No.
It is, but the thing about it is that visually for Western cultures, because we're reading left to right, that drop off, it actually creates a sense of speed. So it has this vertigo that you have within it. And then it's a nice, simple poster.
Yeah, I think it, and especially because the first one was almost like an indie movie. The first one, it was just a weird kind of, let's do a story about street racing. And I don't think they had any ideas of how massive of a franchise it was going to become.
I guarantee you someone knew. Like there would have been a couple of people involved in this that were just like, oh, we can make a couple of these. These will be good.
That's true.
I don't know if any of them would have seen, but they must have known because it's when it came out, it was like street racing had been really popularized through Japan at that time and was starting to come through Western cultures. Also through anime, because this is around Initial the time, D. I believe, Initial D, which is where all of those light streaks kind of, unless you're going to go back to like Akira in the 80s, which is an anime that has amazing light trails on it.
I watched that fairly recently and didn't realize how grotesque it was until the second time around. But
Akira?
Yes.
What are you talking about? It's gorgeous. It's just Tetsuo exploding with human goodness.
Yeah, lots of blood and everything. It was that would be another poster to do. That was a very iconic one. I think there's about 4 manga authors now that directly were inspired by that Akira poster.
That is anyway. That poster was definitely a poster I had when I was a teenager.
Yeah, it's a very cool
absolutely amazing.
The amount of parodies I've seen of that one, like King of the Hill, and he's got a ride-on lawnmower instead of a bike. But anyway, the second poster,
Too Fast, Too Furious.
So we're getting into the interesting naming conventions. I don't know if you've ever played the game Kingdom Hearts. Are you aware of that series?
I am. I haven't played it.
So that game just decided it was going to name the follow-up games whatever the hell it wanted, and we were going to have to deal with keeping track of them. I agree
with that. I feel like as a society, let's do whatever we want now.
It's not the author's responsibility.
It's like it used to have to be like, oh, it's James Bond this, and then they I feel like even Bond learned real quick. They were like, no, we'll just call it whatever we want and people will find it.
Yes, that makes it very hard to track down posters because I was going to do a Bond episode of this and I had to just remember what they were all called.
But you don't need to because you got Wikipedia now.
Exactly. So that did come in handy. That was one thing that Ryan Wilson, the author of Knives Out and Glass Onion, he is
Yeah.
really annoyed that they had to put a Knives Out mystery in the subtitle of Glass Onion. He wanted them to just be like Agatha Christie standalones.
Yeah, yeah. I very much got that feeling based on that.
Yeah,
Also a gorgeous poster.
Yes, that I think I might wait until a few more of them come out, but definitely I love how each one has its own logo.
More. Check out this Optimist.
I'm a fiend for them.
Yeah, you're like, they're just going to keep making these.
Churn them out. I want as many Knives Out movies as there are Bond movies.
I mean, it does make, and it's like, let's face it, I'd way rather watch Daniel Craig in a Knives Out movie than a Bond movie.
Yeah, he definitely is a lot more interesting.
Just more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's only going to, he's, in the same sense that Dominic eventually, I think the term is Flanderization. Have you ever heard that before?
No.
So it comes from the idea that Ned Flanders in the first couple of seasons was just a well-meaning Christian neighbor, but by the end he's a Jesus freak, just like little bit every season. And it's the same thing with Dominic, the voice. I'm really looking forward to seeing how fabulous Benoit Blanc becomes by the third or the fourth Knives Out, whatever you call it, that series.
Yeah, so at some point there's gonna be, if they make four of them, that at least one of the next two he's gonna hit rock bottom. There's gonna be something's gonna go wrong.
Then he has to get his groove back, or that kind of.
Yeah.
Or do you think it's just all downhill?
Benoit gets his groove back. I love it.
So yes, Too Fast, Too Furious. This one, I really remember this poster quite vividly because it was the one that I saw. I think I was kind of more cognizant. I think the first one came out when I was about 10 or something. And then this one here was when I was more cognizant, I think is the word. And yeah, interesting choice that Vin Diesel didn't come back for the second movie. I don't know if he's ever said why. I guess maybe he just felt like he'd done it.
What do you mean? Why? You know why?
Why didn't he come back?
Because you can sit here and be like, hey, why didn't he come back for this massive franchise? But that's not what it was.
Yeah,
it was a car movie that did okay.
Yeah.
And they went, shit, we could make another one. And Vin Diesel was like, I don't want to get typecast as the car guy.
That's fair.
And then it became an iconic franchise. And he's like, well, I can play that. I could come back for that.
Yeah, I could clear my schedule a little bit. The last Riddick movie didn't do so well.
Oh, no. Yeah, he's like, don't talk about it.
Yeah. Too Fast, Too Furious, I think, as well, was the peak of all those. Do you remember the neon signs? Not neon signs, excuse me, the neon lights underneath the cars?
Yes, yeah.
That was the peak of, and all of the, I don't know what you'd call them. I think the subculture in Japan now is called itasha, which is cringe. And it's when they're covered in anime stickers and whatnot. And I don't think they were quite on that level, but they were definitely what is this? Is JDM is the subculture, the archetype or whatever.
Yeah.
And then from this movie, I think they toned it down a little bit because nowadays they just drive, I don't even know what they drive. They're just black and charcoal cars.
Part of the Fast and the Furious is to be it's meant to be a taste making show. This show, it's, it can't work without you watching it and going, I want that car.
Yeah, that's true.
That's part of it is when you see, the reason Dom is so great is you look at Dom and you're like, great, I could, I can be bald,
Yeah, it's an aspirational look.
I could have La Familia.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is that thing of you want to be able to drive those cars. You want to feel like
they are very cool.
There's a chance that you could, and I think that, for us, we can look back and go, oh, yeah, lighting underneath cars is a bit weird, but I love it, and it's still around. It's not like it went anywhere. LEDs just got more affordable.
Yeah, that's true. You do see them in people's bedrooms a lot now.
They did go in terms of fashion and style.
Yeah.
They are not as in fashion at the moment.
Yeah,
it's
right
more
there.
of a statement now to have under car lighting than it was when this movie came out. When this movie came out, it wasn't a statement. It was a cool thing to do.
Everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, but this might be the nitrous thing that they used to do where they would push the button on the steering wheel and they would go flying into hyperspeed.
Hit that NOS.
That was a real thing, wasn't it? People actually were putting it into cars.
Yeah, people still do that.
They still do. Okay.
I was going to say, you can still get turbos put in your car.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't
sure.
This
whole industry is dedicated to it.
Interesting. I honestly wasn't sure if you still like if people still did it or if cars were just, I don't know, getting powerful now. You don't need it.
I'd have no idea what the legal requirements would be in somewhere like New Zealand for it, but
I'm pretty sure it's been illegal here for a long time.
yeah, no, it is the US. Yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's a superpower for your car, so it's not going to go away.
So video gamey. I think that's why these movies did well, is they're very video gamey.
Yeah.
I remember
but they made it seem more accessible.
Yeah.
They made it seem like, because not like Turbo, like NOS has been in video games since they've ever existed, because it's the perfect game mechanic.
It is.
Of like, oh, you have a limited burst of speed. It's like, what? But it also, that's existed in drag racing for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it was the idea of like, and I'm sure that it had already gone into street racing by the time these came out, but
definitely.
I mean, it's such a great narrative device.
It is. Like, you can only use it once during the race. That's your kind of pick the right moment to do it. And yeah, no, it is very good for storytelling. I remember in the first movie, he tried it out, and we were talking about the characters being cool before. Like, I remember Paul, he was kind of a geek in the first one. Like, he was like,
oh my God, he was all tech. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this tech stuff.
And he was sort of like the fish out of water a little bit amongst these kind of vaguely Latino street gang racers, and he's the corn-fed white guy cop, but he gradually just gets cooler and cooler as the movies go on. And yeah, I seem to remember that, like, there was a big deal about him getting his nitrous in the first movie. But it didn't help him, because then he caught up to Dom, and then Dom just went, well, I have that too, and you've used yours now, so like, what are you going to do? And it was also the debut of Ludacris, and I can't remember what his character's called. Tej, I think.
Is that him in this poster? Is he the middle one?
He's the middle bottom character.
Ludacris.
It's
good on him.
I didn't mind him in this movie, though. He definitely toned down his look. I think he had a big afro in this one, and then in the later ones, I assume he just had his regular haircut, and like, he kind of does just become Ludacris in the later movies,
which kind of makes sense, right? Like, if anything, don't bring him into act. Just bring him in to be Ludacris with a different name.
The face on the poster, the people go, oh, cool, Ludacris is in that movie, I'll go and see it.
Well, also, he just pumped up the soundtrack. Like, what a great...
Of course, yeah. Those two definitely go hand in hand.
I will say that in terms of design on the second one, the poster that you shared had exactly the thing that I constantly am trying to forget existed, which is when everyone became obsessed with brushed metal.
Yes.
And it was like, and it was kind of, because it had existed, I mean, it's been around forever. It was like 80s action movies used that brush steel whole bunch, but when it came back in the 90s, when it came back in the early and mid 2000s, it was because people could do it easily, and it was like often combined with like embossing, and it was just very lazy and not fun. Like, it's not like Terminator 2 makes sense. The robots, the steel machines, and I'll let them get away with it for some of the action movies, because it's like hard steel, guns, explosives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For this one, come on, all the cars are beautiful,
right?
And painted. Make it all shiny, make it gorgeous.
Or carbon fiber even would make more sense, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
That was the look. A lot of people just had the bonnet. I remember the carbon fiber bonnet was a big look.
Yeah.
But it's for the design of the poster. It is pretty standard. Like, it's another one of the floating heads kind of.
This is very much of that time when every movie was action stars, something about what you're going to see in the movie title.
Yeah. I think they sort of carried on the effect they did in the first movie, but I actually liked the grayscale effect they put on the characters a bit more, because it felt more stylized. Something looks weirdly icy about these characters, because it's definitely like a blue. It's like a blue.
I can hit you with what that is. The first poster. They're black and white. In this poster, they've converted them from color into black and white, air quotes, but they've run blue through the whole thing, which is the goal, and that's what they were trying to do. But for us now, we're like, it's quite jarring, because it doesn't quite have, I don't know what it is about it that just doesn't feel, it just feels cold.
Yeah. Absolutely. I also think it's funny because I have only sort of noticed this ever since I've started doing the poster podcast is how awfully like just cheesy some of these taglines are on the posters. Like at the bottom it says, "How fast do you like it?" And I think like that doesn't really feel like I can't picture any of the characters in the movie saying that. Maybe Ludacris's character, but do you know what I mean there? They would have just slapped that on there as an attention grabber. Like I saw, God, it was the 2004 Godzilla movie, that American remake, and it said something on the poster like "size does matter," and I was just, oh, that's so lame. Like, you know, how many executives would that have gone through, and they would have gone, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think people are really gonna they're really gonna
but
read
they
that.
honestly writing those taglines must be so hard because it just has to have the broadest appeal possible, right?
Yeah,
Like it is like those taglines are because a lot of them are, I mean, it's meant to be a call to action, but
mm,
that's not what taglines are anymore. Like taglines are like a weird, like also,
mm,
I
yeah,
mean,
I
too
get,
fast, too furious. How fast do you like it? Well, I guess too fast.
yeah,
How furious do I like it? Well, too
yeah,
furious.
yeah.
Why are you asking me about the fastness and not the furiousness?
Yeah, it very much feels like something that they put on very last minute. Like, oh, and also we better put a tagline on there because even the font, like, it's not the same one as the title. To my eyes right now, it almost looks like a digital clock font, but I don't think it is. I think it's just because it's zoomed out. But
It's similar to a digital font clock. It's got a
yeah,
little bit of that. I
and then of
mean,
course
it is.
the three cars in the middle, which that car from number two is definitely a bit of an icon there. Like, I definitely remember that even 20 something years later.
But this is also we're heading into like uncanny valley in terms of the photoshopping,
Yeah, they don't
right?
look great, do they?
Like is that car the car's about to drive over Ludacris's face? Like, what is
Yeah.
the like they've given them no space. They've scrunched them all in and been like, aren't you having a good time?
Yeah, that's one thing that they seem to flip flop between with these posters later on is they can't decide if they want to focus on the cars or the people. And it's like often, I forget which one it was later on, but there was one where you're looking at a very blurry group of people through the wheel arches of a car. And you're like, is that
Which
what?
I'm okay with. I'm
I
like, hit
mean,
me with that product. You know what I'm here for.
exactly. Yeah, the shiny, I don't know what it is, the paint. I don't know cars at all. But yeah, anything else you'd like to mention that like it looks like there's some kind of glistening stars like on Paul Walker and
Oh, that's the lights from the backdrop of the cars,
of course I don't
street
know.
lamps.
I might have photoshopped that out if I was doing the poster, but
I might have
yeah.
photoshopped it so that the two main characters weren't sharing a spine.
Yeah, the floating head movies do produce some
Yeah.
pretty interesting biology, don't they?
Well, just I mean, Fast and the Furious movies, I think they like I mean, this poster is a perfect example of this like when brooding was so cool. Like you look
Yes.
at everyone in this shot, everyone's like at an angle on a tilt.
Yeah.
They're all, and
Looking over the
like
shoulder.
yeah, and then looking like up over their eyebrows, like,
Yes. That's where the movie loses me a little bit sometimes, is that the characters seem to be take themselves very seriously, and it's sometimes borderlines into cringe for me,
well, I
especially in
think
the
that
later
they
ones.
didn't know. They didn't know what, they were still working out what the magic sauce was.
Yeah, that's true.
They didn't have The Rock to tell them how to do it right.
Yeah, not for another few movies.
Exactly. They were like, oh, maybe we look fun, maybe we're cocky,
Yeah.
maybe we're mad.
Yeah, it's up to viewer interpretation as to how they're feeling. But yeah, I
Yeah.
I know what you mean about the smolder. Like Paul Walker doing his what did they call it in Zoolander? The blue steel? Is that
Yeah.
was the face? And then that also works because they're slightly blued in
No,
the
they are blue steel.
maybe that's what they were going for.
Oh damn! Is that what I bet you that whoever designed this like saw Zoolander and was like, "That's it, we're doing that."
That's the look we're doing for the second
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, we're gonna do it. Everyone, we're redoing the photos. I want blue steel all round.
Yeah. And I feel like the second one, I'm trying to remember what cities they take place in. The first one was California, probably somewhere. That's where there's a lot of like Latin Americans living in that kind of like the West Coast area, right?
I mean, that's most of America at the time, though. Yeah, I believe it's set in California because they're
Yeah.
doing the very much like the West Coast customs kind of culture
Yes.
pops up quite a bit in
A lot
these
of palm
movies where
trees. Yeah.
yeah, where they're like oh, we're doing amazing car things. And then also, like, I guess we're all just fitting out cars.
Yeah. And then the second one I remember was they sort of made a big deal that they moved it to Miami because there was a little mini episode where he was like street racing his way to Miami, winning races and money along the way.
Road trip.
Yeah. And then
I mean, it's no Cannonball Run, but they're doing their best.
yeah, I mean they had to
Don't rewatch it. It's quite offensive now, I believe.
Okay. It would just be watching it for the first time. I really only sort of know it's an Arnold movie, isn't it?
Cannonball Run?
Yes.
No, Burt Reynolds.
Oh right. Oh yeah. Okay. It's
Jackie Chan's in it as a Japanese driver.
You love to see what was that, a 70s movie?
Yeah, I believe like probably late 70s.
Yeah, I can imagine that maybe didn't age well in some areas.
Dom DeLuise is in it.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly.
Neither does anyone else.
No, someone does. Someone does, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, yes!"
True, shout out.
I used to love him.
Okay, so now I've picked out one for you to check out, which is the Japanese version of Need for Speed. Oh, Jesus, I messed that up completely. Need for Speed's the video game. Too Fast, Too Furious. That is the correct title. Do you know what it's called in Japan?
Too Fast, Too Furious?
No, actually, this might make you laugh. The whole franchise in Japan is called Wild Speed.
Oh, I love that. That's a great name.
They call it Wild Speed.
Yeah.
And the naming convention is a lot simpler in Japan. They're usually just called, Wild Speed and then a descriptor. So the one where they go to space was called Wild Speed Space Mission.
Boring.
Yeah, exactly. It's too easy to follow.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm about. But it's also like not easy because they don't have any of the, how do you know what the order is?
Exactly. I think maybe they do number it. It looks like this one's called Wild Speed ×2, which I love. They've also done that metal effect that you love so much on the
but they've compromised by putting this one at a 45-degree angle
and then a big fireball behind the type.
Yeah. They really went all out with the Photoshop on this one. If you told me that this was a poster I designed in 2001, I would not be surprised.
I find it interesting that the Japanese version focuses more on the cars than the people. Although it looks like the images are the exact ones that they used on the English poster.
Oh, they definitely are.
They haven't put that blue effect that we talked about before, but they've put plenty of the blur on the cars at the top.
There's definitely the color scheme and the way that they've treated this reminds me a lot of Initial D.
Yes, I think that, like you say, that's probably the reason it's so popular is because of Initial D. Although, I mean, the whole, Dorifto thing over there is like huge anyway, so it makes a lot of sense. I can read some of the text on this. So that one, the first line of text that's just coming out of Paul Walker's head, looks like it says Genkai o ukinukeru, which is like, I think it means remove the limits.
Yeah.
Then underneath them, the text just says all of the characters' names. Paul Walker, Tairi Sugibson, and Eva Mendes. She was what was her character called? I'm really blanking on her character's name, but she was in a few of them. And then,
there's only one character name, and it's Dom.
Yeah, that's it.
The only one you need to remember. Everyone else's family. You know the rules.
Yeah, that's fair. And then this is one thing they always do on Japanese posters is the text that's just above Tyrese and Suki's head. Basically just says, I can't remember what the reading for America is, but it says Bakuhatsu no America #1 hit, which is like every movie that comes out in Japan from America, it's always a #1 hit in America, which I think is probably the equivalent to those cheesy lines that I was complaining about before. Is they always mention how big of a hit it was in America.
Which, why wouldn't you? It's like when anyone tours in New Zealand, they're all like, we did great elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Please also make us do good here.
International comedian, they always say when they come over, don't they?
Yeah, and it's like, we know you're international. You're not from here.
Yeah, we don't know you by a first name basis as we do most of the other comedians.
Is your name Guy? Well, then you're probably foreign.
Yeah. So with all that sort of wild speed in mind, let's have a look at the third poster, which was where the series took a pretty big divergent at the time, I think.
Man, they rolled the dice.
They did,
took a
and
risk.
I think it's one of those polarizing movies. Like, for me, it's one of my favorites, but I know it was not popular with people that really liked the whole Dom Paul story. A
Well,
little Easter egg. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, as a poster, it's gorgeous. Look
I
at
think
them.
it's really
They're
cool.
still missing. They're still missing a lot with the use of white space.
Mm.
Which is great. Still sticking with their guns on black and white photography for
Grayscale
the
characters, yeah.
yeah.
It even says Wild Speed, and one of the neon signs, it just says the Japanese name of the movies,
Oh,
which
what
I
a
thought
great plan!
I didn't realize that until I saw it today, but that's very cool.
Easter eggs.
Yeah. And this is really the first one that I remember actually like kind of properly watching outside of being a child. And it's quite funny because the plot of this movie is almost exactly Karate Kid, except instead of karate, it's drifting cars. If you look at the beats of the story of each of them, they're basically the same movie, but just in
Which is not a bad plan.
no, I mean it's not like the storyline didn't work out for them, the Karate Kid people. And yeah, just like this one, I remember all of the promo for being really stylish, and it was like it just seemed to me like this was the coolest movie. Wow, Japan, that's a really interesting and foreign place, and they're drifting cars, and they've got all the stickers and the neons on the cars, and just yeah, something about it seems so like space
And then the
age
more
to
and
me.
more that you learn, the more you're like, oh wait, that's not. It's not weird for these cars to be here. This is way more logical for them to be here than on the streets of Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly.
This makes much more sense. Drifting
Yeah.
seems much more required when you have winding mountain passes versus
Absolutely.
an 18-lane highway.
Yeah, yeah, because they used to just do drag racing in those first couple, didn't they? They would. I can't remember what did Dom say? He used to live his life at a quarter mile at the time, which I guess was
Yeah.
a couple of blocks on a an LA street. But yeah, do you remember? Did you see this one when it came out?
Oh, I definitely did. I think I was working for a radio station and got free tickets to this.
That's awesome.
And
Did
I
you
will
like
say
it?
that, oh, yeah, I mean, it's a romp. It's not my jam, but it was
Yeah.
great. Like, the thing about it is that it's like, if they'd just taken the Western elements out of it, it would have been great.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
to
but
the sort of pseudo white savior kind of thing, right?
yeah, where they're just like, hey, you're just like,
Yeah,
nah, we're good. We're good. We don't
yeah.
really need you here.
Yeah, I wonder if there's probably stuff that hasn't aged super well. So I haven't seen it in years, but one thing I definitely remember, because did I ever tell you I used to live over there?
No.
Yeah, so I lived in Fukuoka, which is the southern island, Kyushu. It's like the capital of there, and this movie really set up my expectations badly for how well people could speak English there. Like he runs into he runs into like 12
Yeah.
people that all speak English on his first day, and I remember
Whereas
going
when you
like,
actually go there, the
oh,
Japanese people are like, no, we got our own thing
we got
going
our own,
on.
yeah, no,
We don't need English.
you
We're
need
good.
to integrate. And but yeah, I remember being like, oh, what this Fast and the Furious lied to me. Like, this is terrible. Like, I can't understand anyone. Yeah, and
Yeah, they deeply lied to you.
yeah, exactly.
Even
And
down to the fact that they're like that this movie implies that the Japanese are like interested in American culture.
yeah,
Whereas it's like,
yeah. I mean,
which
they
I'm
do.
sure there are people.
They love
But
Starbucks and baseball, so that's
yeah, but you can be keen on specifics, but you're not getting like it definitely isn't a thing where if you turn up not able to speak Japanese and go, I'm American, can we hang? Then
yeah.
people are like, yeah, let me know when you speak my language. I don't know what the hell you're doing.
I used to get mistaken for being American or German. That was the two that people thought I was, and I always, very quick to let them know that I wasn't American, because a little bit of history between those two countries. And if it was an old guy just randomly out in public asking me if I'm American, it's like, no,
Oh,
I'm
no.
not, sir. Like, I had
I mean,
nothing to
I'm
do
half
with
American and I still say no to that.
it. Well, yeah, I guess you got to play your cards close to your chest with that one sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what else to say, but
This poster is a nightmare. All right.
Yeah.
The kerning on this is disgusting. All right. And I'm going to ruin this poster for you in a few very specific things.
Please go ahead.
If you look at the O on Furious,
Uh-huh.
Now, it's an optical illusion because they haven't spaced the letter correctly.
Uh-huh.
So the O blooms. It's like
Yeah, I
it
see it now that you
pulsates.
pointed it out.
So, and part of what that is because your eye is being tricked by the fact that they've gone back to their incredibly infuriating, pun intended, dropped capital of the F.
Yeah.
So the F is like slightly hanging, like the lines on this are chaos because you've also got a poorly italicized typeface. So if you ever feel like the world's closing in on you, just head into the middle of Tokyo because they haven't bothered to kern the K and the Y there.
All,
and there is a chasm.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Even noticing, I didn't realize that the T and the D hang quite a bit below that, but I've noticed it now. And the before furious doesn't line up with the bottom of the F. I think that's probably a line to the
bottom of the line. But then it's like, what are you guys doing? Why would you do that?
Because I guess they were trapped by their own style, and that they had to make this completely different set of words look like
they really just are all over the place on this one.
In terms of the name, though, Tokyo Drift, I think it's a cool movie sounding name.
Yeah, I'd go and see Tokyo Drift. I don't need, call it Tokyo Drift, a Fast and Furious story. All right, what's the problem?
Exactly. Yeah, I think.
But at the time, it was, they were like, oh shit, how do we keep this franchise? How do we keep the ball up in the air?
They need people to know that it's a part of the franchise. Yeah, I don't think I have much else to say about this one. I like it, but that might just be my pink nostalgia shades.
100%. This is not a well-designed poster.
A completely white road that they're standing on. But then,
you've also, you got to go, what is the feeling that they're trying to create?
That doesn't make sense, does it? No stars in the sky.
Oh, yeah. They should have taken those stars from the second poster.
You're right. Yeah.
Come on,
that's
guys.
where they ended up. And then the thing, there's like, I guess they've whited out the street behind the characters, but then Sean is randomly standing in front of a car that's sort of like half cut off behind him.
Yeah.
And it looks like
he's on the road.
Yeah. It looks like they've maybe brushed it lightly with a masking tool or something.
Yeah, I do wonder if the perspective on this checks out because it looks like that car is up higher than it's not important. There's like 9 other movies that we can worry about.
This is true. We probably should crack on. So the next movie is number 4. And this one I couldn't figure out what was the official movie poster because I'd seen a lot of them, but this was the one on Wikipedia. So that was the one I took as the, quote unquote official poster.
By now, by this point, there were no official posters. I think I think for Fast and Furious, they were doing proper market testing where they're just like, what about this? What about that?
That's true. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And I don't know if I like this poster. I like the car bit, but the faces at the top feel like, I guess they've obviously tried to make Paul Walker and Vin Diesel more prominent than the other two, but they just feel like kind of giant compared to the two ladies' faces.
Well, so what's happening is you've got clearly 4 different photo shoots. You've got 4 different face sizes. You've got different alignments. So, you've got 2 of them, you can only see 1 eye. 2 of them, you can see 2 eyes. 1 of them is basically straight on. And all of that stuff, you have to remember, our brains are massive decoding machines.
Yeah.
So, and human faces are like one of the main things that we're set up to decode because that's how we tribalize and stay safe amongst people. So when you have a poster like this where there's so many different lighting angles happening and so much fake perspective and shape, they can't stand this close together, but also they're not pretended they're not all in the same uniform setup. So it's so emotionally exhausting. If you're quite empathetic, you'll look at this and you're just like, what is happening? And why is everyone like how tiny is the last woman in this poster? It's
definitely
which is a shame because the juxtaposition, the coloring, the use of the grayscale imagery versus the color on the car is actually a really fun juxtaposition.
Yeah.
But by then we're all squeezed in and they've put all of the copy for this on the car.
It's really crashed together,
but not recognizing the actual shape of the car.
No.
Like the whoever's designed this, I don't know if they own a car because they've put the text going straight into the tire,
Yeah.
which that again makes you feel uncomfortable because you're like, oh, is there not enough room for the tire? They've
Yeah.
also, if you want more things to break your brain, they've centered the type and then they've like left and right aligned the type as well. So the tagline is
Oh yeah, I hadn't
right
noticed that
aligned
before.
to the credits, but semi-centered. It actually
Yes.
looks like it might be left aligned to the U of Urias.
Hmm. I
But
think you're right there. Actually, just hold that thought. I just realized my laptop isn't actually plugged in. I better go and do that before it dies.
oh no. Meanwhile, I will say that they brought back the brushed steel, and it does not look terrible this time around. And so these are very
Okay.
low resolution. We got to get you some higher resolution imagery.
Yeah, they do look a bit sort of it does look a bit amateur compared to some of the other ones. I guess the light they must have done it in one shoot for that Fast and the Furious 2 Blue Steel shoot, right?
Yeah, I mean, they probably would have so many photos by now of the
That's
stars of
true.
this movie looking brooding.
Yeah, they could probably yeah, they could have any you could make a three-dimensional um
Yeah.
rotating thing with those. And in terms of like, I guess this movie was when I don't want to say the franchise like came back, but it was. I remember a lot of people being like happy that it was following the original story again.
Yeah, it was a reboot. I mean, they knew that when they named it, right? They're like Fast
Yeah,
and Furious. It's like, oh, you can't just go back and basically call it the same. And they're like,
yeah.
oh, actually, we can. We checked.
They just got rid of the in the titles.
It's
What do you think of the
perfect.
chrome sort of effect on the title in this one?
Way nicer.
Yeah,
Way nicer. It's we've stepped out from that Photoshop brushed steel.
yeah,
But what they've done, which they are notorious for doing, is they've scaled the type up. So they haven't made the type bigger, they've just scaled it up. So you end up with these really fat letters or thick letters when the font itself is already thick.
oh, so they would have done like an offset path or something to make them a bit chunkier rather
They
than.
well, they needed to do the reverse. You need to make them thinner so they actually match the type.
Yes, I see what you mean.
So
They just
because
scaled
they
up the three
share, yeah,
heads.
they share no, they're not the same scale. Like when you
Yeah,
do a drop cap, your drop cap is generally, like it's either its own thing or it's a bigger version of what's there.
but it's the
But the
same
bigger version
thickness.
still has to read with the rest of it,
Yes, yeah, you're
which
right
is
there.
like,
Well,
if you blur your eyes a little, it's just like Ast and Urius.
that might be a good name for the next one they're going to make, Aston Arius.
Get up to speed.
Is that what it says on the poster, or is that a?
Yeah, yeah, yep. That's the tagline in there.
Oh, it is too, right at the bottom in red, just before. Yeah, this I like that the texture they put on the title kind of goes with the chrome bits of the car as well. It feels like it kind of belongs in that world,
Yeah.
which I think is good. But other than that, I don't think I have a lot else to say about it. I can't even remember what the movie was about.
No one can. I hear they got a new model, but it had the original parts.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's this is when the movies all sort of begin to blur into one for me. I remember there was I think they had Han from the third one, the Korean guy who was like living in Tokyo because he was fleeing America. I think he was in this one as well, which people were pretty chuffed about him coming back because he was a popular character.
Yeah.
Other than
Oh,
that,
yeah.
I don't have much to say, so let's just crack on with the next one. This was another one that it was, like you say, a lot of market testing for Fast Five. There was they all were very minimalist though. The one we're looking at now, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the logo, which is combining. I don't even know
I
what
love
bit
it.
of it.
I love it.
You do like it?
I love it. I mean, it's completely broken,
Yeah.
but it's great. So one thing that I will say is like all of the posters so far that have kind of they've lived in it's minimalism, but it's I think the movement was called New Simplicity,
Uh-huh.
where it was kind of going against like postmodernism of like all of the things. And so it's so great. Like by the Fast Five, which is the one where we've got all of this space, and
Mm.
they've done so well because they're not going they by now they trust so much in their audience
Yeah.
that they're like, look at all of this space, we're going to fill that with cars and explosions.
Mm.
And they know, they're like, you've had 4 movies to learn. Like,
Yeah.
if you need us to tell you what's going to, like, The Rock is here. You can
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
And Fast Five, I think, like, I don't know what that conversation was or how it happened, where you've got the F from Fast being also the F from Five.
Yes,
where
that's what I was trying to articulate.
but where it's one F and they just roll off the top of the F and then the middle bar of the F.
Uh-huh.
But it is, when you think about it in terms of marketing and branding, holy cow, it's so great, because if you don't know what that means, you're not part of the family.
This fun little club, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is where they really start to go, we've got our own language, we're doing our own thing, and you're either on board or you're not. And we know that enough of you are on board.
Yes.
Like, we don't have to beg you to come and see a Fast and Furious movie by now.
Yeah, at this point, you're going to watch it or you're not. And
yeah, you're like, look, there's Vin Diesel, there's Paul Walker, there's The Rock. Dwayne Johnson's going to, what have you got? What more do you need? There's some little bits of cars, which is great, because they're like, we're not even going to show you the whole cars.
Yeah.
Because I think this is when they started to market it quite divided as to, here are the people and here are the cars. And it was like, those are the 2 things that you need to know about. And it's like, it's not even, oh man, this is like, you think about none of these that we've seen so far, do the posters tell you anything about the narrative?
You're right. Yeah, we can't tell what the movie's actually about.
Yeah, there's like, none of them have like, oh, we have to get this back, oh, we have to go. No, it's just, you can relax. All right, we're going to bring you a bunch of cars, a bunch of beautiful people, probably some strong bods. There'll be some explosions, there'll be some, but like, I love this as a concept because it's blue skies. Like, literally, they're just like, oh, it's blue skies now, but you just wait until the movie starts.
That's right. Yeah, and it's also I don't know how to articulate this. It feels so different to the other posters, because the others were dark and like monochromatic and like super stylized, whereas this is just like, looks like they've done a really quality photo shoot and gone, yep, that's what we want.
I think it's just they've done better to hide the photo shoot. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if half of these images are like on-set stills. Yeah, and they just, because the perspective is still a mess. Like, you look at how close the people are behind Dwayne Johnson.
The feet don't match up at all, yeah.
Like, those people are about maybe 3.5 feet tall, according to the perspective that we can see. But they also know that doesn't matter. Look at the ground, the shape of the car, the size of the cars completely changes.
And the ground almost could just be a gradient.
The ground is not even a consistent gradient. It's a shifting It's like, it's whatever it needs to be for the car that's sitting on it to look the best.
I wonder if this, because I do remember reading about the backstage drama, I guess, if you will, where maybe egos got quite pumped up, and there was a movie, it might be the following one, but it's the one with Jason Statham in it as well, and allegedly Vin Diesel, The Rock, and Jason Statham had a contract clause where no one of the 3 was allowed to land more hits on the other 2, or vice versa. Do you remember? They all had to. They assigned a point system for each strike.
I love it.
A headbutt was 5 points, a punch was 2, a kick was 3.
So great.
They had to have the same amount of points between them.
Was this a real thing?
I mean, I wasn't there, but this is what I've heard.
I'm very happy if it is.
Because that's the thing is, I think, you've got someone like The Rock, who was pretty famous for being quite generous in wrestling. Did you ever watch professional wrestling?
Yeah. I'm very familiar with the people's eyebrow.
Yeah, he was pretty.
He's a little after my time, but I definitely am aware of the fact that he was. But it's also, you've got all 3 of these guys are not there. You've got The Rock, who comes from this massive heart, this beautiful, like, build the family, lift each other up, like, be a badass, but work your butt off. Jason Statham is a Commonwealth Games diver.
Yes, he
And
was,
he's
wasn't
gonna
he?
be he's gonna be like, all right, no one gonna hit me more than I hit them. You're like,
Yeah.
bro, you were in Crank too.
Like Vin Diesel, I guess it's you kind of understand why it's always kind of been his franchise. And yeah, I don't know, The Rock, because they had to split them off and make another film of Hobbs and Shaw, I think, and that was, I think, the kind of these three
Hey
can't
man,
coexist.
good on you guys. If you get to a point in your life where you're like, I'm yeah, but equally, I can imagine all of them are at a stage in their career where they're like, hey, can I not work with that person because we don't get along?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is yes, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when they were deciding how to do those they call it Fast and Furious Presents or something like that, because it was another we need to make sure everyone knows it's in the series, but it's not really in the series thing. I think we'll get to that in a second. I think I've sort of run out of things to talk about with Fast Five.
Fast and Furious 6.
Yeah, number six. Probably should have seen this coming, given that there is 10 movies that we're talking about, but I did not expect this conversation to get so in-depth and go as long as it did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this conversation into two parts, and we'll end the first one there, and you can check back in, I think, next week for part two of this riveting discussion, which will also be followed up by the After Dark segment where we talk to Steven about what's been going on in his life, and so on and so forth. So with that, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to part one of our Fast and Furious discussion of the Poster podcast. We'll see you next week.